Hey guys, today I decided to talk about the beginning of chapter 3, which really broke down all the parts of classical conditioning. First, we have Pavlov's famous experiment with dogs. Pavlov noticed that the biologically significant stimulus, food, had the power to elicit salivation unconditionally. The unconditioned stimulus is food. The unconditioned response is the salivation. The conditioned stimulus is the ringing bell, and the conditioned response is the response to the sound of the bell itself. Conditioning with one CS could often generalize to other similar CSs. Responding to similar cues is called generalization. So drooling to food did not depend on the dog having been through the experiment. So that's why the unconditioned stimulus is a food. And then because the drooling response to food was not conditional to the experiment, that also is why the salivation is the UR. The sound of the bell comes to elicit salivation as a result of the conditioning experience. And Pavlov's dogs learned to salivate to things like bubbling noises, whistles, metronomes, and rotating discs, which is examples of generalization. Next, we have what is learned in conditioning. Pavlov assumed that the dogs came to associate the bell and the food, and that the bell eventually elicited drooling because it had been associated with the food. The ringing bell became a substitute for the food in controlling the drooling reflex. His idea is known today as the stimulus substitution theory. And then the crucial association between two stimuluses is S-to-S learning. Variations on the basic experiment. Second order conditioning is a classical conditioning procedure in which a conditioned response is acquired by a neutral stimulus when the latter is paired with a stimulus that has been previously conditioned. And then sensory preconditioning is a classical conditioning procedure in which two neutral stimuli at first pair with each other, and then one of them is paired with an unconditioned stimulus. When the other neutral stimulus is tested, it evokes a CR, even though it was never paired with the US itself. Both are ways that organisms can come to respond to a CS. Methods for studying classical conditioning, conditioning preparations, any of the several methods for studying classical conditioning. Fear conditioning in rats. The CER, the conditioned emotional response, is a method for studying classical conditioning in which the conditional stimulus is associated with a mild electric shock, and the CS comes to suppress an ongoing behavior, such as lever pressing reinforced by food. Suppression ratio is the measure of conditioning used in the CER. Appetitive conditioning in rats, goal tracking, movement toward the site where a positive unconditional stimulus will be delivered during presentation of a conditional stimulus that signals the unconditional stimulus, and then conditioned food cup entry. This is also called the magazine approach. This is a method for studying classical conditioning in which the conditional stimulus is associated with a food pellet, and the CS comes to elicit approach to the food cup where the pellet will be delivered. That's all.